Hi, I'm Ronald, and welcome to Bible Talk, where I discuss the Bible, and today continuing in the book of Genesis with chapters 48 to 50, the last chapters of this book. In the previous chapter, we saw Jacob preparing for his death at the age of 147 by asking his son Joseph to make sure that he was buried in Canaan, not Egypt. 48, 1-4. Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was told, "Indeed, your father is sick." And he took him with his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and Jacob was told, "Look, your son Joseph is coming to you." And Israel strengthened himself up and sat on the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, and said to me, Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a multitude of people, and give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession." Now, Luz is another name for Bethel. We see that in Genesis 28:19 and 35:6, where Jacob first met God. Now, Jacob vividly remembered this outstanding encounter with the Lord. "Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you." Jacob's phrasing is reminiscent of the exact promises God made to Abraham in Genesis 17. Abraham was careful to pass down the exact words of God's covenant with him to the inheritors of the covenant because the exact words of God were important. Verses 5 and 6, "And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Egypt, before I came to you in Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon are mine. They shall be mine. Your offspring, who you beget after them, shall be yours, and they will be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance." Reuben and Simeon were the firstborn and secondborn of Israel. Jacob received the two sons of Joseph as adopted into the family at the highest level, as if they were his own first and second sons born. And perhaps they were something similar to replacements of Reuben and Simeon, who were in a sense disqualified from the status and leadership positions of the family because of their sin, Genesis 34:25 and 35:22. Now, Jacob's adoption of Manasseh and Ephraim explain why there are 12 tribes often listed in different combinations. Because of this adoption, there were 13 sons of Israel. But the tribes received different land from the biblical tribes. For example, the land of Levi had no land appropriation, but had 6 cities of refuge under their administration. In addition, there was no land allotment for the tribe of Joseph, but Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, received their father's land portion. 48, 8-12, Jacob blesses Manasseh and Ephraim. "And Joseph took them both, Ephraim and his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right hand, and brought them near to him. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hand knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn." The right hand in the Bible always has the idea of favored position, because the right hand is the hand of strength and skill. The right hand is associated with God's strength. We see that in Exodus 15:5. It's also associated with favor, Psalm 16:11, and help, Psalm 20, verse 6. This is why Jesus is described as sitting on the right hand of God, the Father, in Mark 14:62. Now, Israel knew exactly what he intended to do. By placing his right hand on Ephraim's head, he intended to grant a greater blessing to the younger. Now, this was against normal custom and expectation. However, we have seen it before. Israel granted the blessing in deep awareness of the covenant that came from God's promise to his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac. And he blessed Joseph. In blessing Joseph's sons, it could be rightly said that Israel blessed Joseph. Israel gave the same blessing to both sons, but the son of the right hand received the greater portion of the blessing. Verse 17-20, "Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand and removed his hand from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, 'Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head.' But his father refused and said, 'I know, my son, I know. He shall also become a people, and he also shall be great. But truly his younger brother shall be the greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations.' So he blessed them that day, saying, by you, Israel, I will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh, as the two sons of Joseph stood before Israel. The older Manasseh was before Israel's right hand, and the younger Ephraim was before Israel's left hand. Now Joseph positioned them intentionally so the older could receive the right hand blessing according to custom, yet Israel deliberately crossed his hands and put his right hand on Ephraim's head and left hand on Manasseh's head. Ephraim was not the firstborn, but God chose him to take the position of firstborn. Jeremiah 31:9 described this. It says, for I am the father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. This shows the idea of firstborn in the Bible is often the position of preeminence, not necessarily meaning the first out of the womb. David had the position of firstborn, even though he was the youngest son, 1 Samuel 16:11. Verse 21-22, then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and will bring you to the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which I took from the hand of the Amorites, and with the sword and my bow. Now, behold, I am dying. This was truly a passing of the torch from Israel to Joseph. Israel was the last of the three great patriarchs from the past. 49:1-2, Jacob called his sons and said, gather together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. Now gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. This was Jacob's last significant act as a patriarch and as an heir to Abraham and Isaac. Here he prophesied blessings upon each son, one by one. Some of what follows are not so much blessings as they are prophecies regarding what God will do with these tribes in the future. Now, this is the first conscience prophecy spoken by a man in the Bible. There were many prophecies announced by God, such as the promise of the triumph of the seed of the woman in Genesis 3:15, and other veiled prophecies by men, but this is the first declared prophecy through a man in the Bible. You, sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. At the very beginning of the blessing, Jacob realized that he was both Jacob and Israel, and his sons are sons of each. This was a place of spiritual maturity, realizing both what God had made him, Israel, and what he had to battle against, Jacob. Jacob then blesses his sons, and does he ever get precise with them? His words reflect a lot of the things that we've seen happen, as well as some things yet to come, some prophecies. Now, Reuben, the oldest son, had slept with his father's concubine. So Jacob retracted his preeminence. The oldest son loses his birthright here, just like we saw happen with Ishmael and Esau. Also remember Simeon and Levi, the second and third sons, who slaughtered all the men in Shechem for retaliation for the rape of their sister Dinah. So because of their actions, the birthright status and preeminence passed over them as well. Instead, the blessing lands on the fourth son, Judah. Not because Judah is perfect. After all, he's the one who had slept with his daughter-in-law, Tamar. But that was a different kind of offense in the eyes of their culture. It didn't threaten the family unit like the actions of the other three did. Now, Judah fathers sons, one of which is Perez, who is listed in the lineage of Jesus, and Perez isn't the firstborn either. Now, all of this is painting a picture of Christ, our older brother, laying down his life and privileges to share his inheritance with us. After Jacob dies, Pharaoh grants them the opportunity to travel back to Canaan to go and bury their father in the tomb that he had requested in the cave of Machpelah. Now, chapter 50 concludes with the burial of Jacob. Joseph comforts his brothers' fear as they're worried that now that their father had died, that he would repay them for the evil that they had done to him. But Joseph first understood that he was not in the place of God. It wasn't his job to bring retribution upon his brothers. If the Lord chose to punish them, he would have to find another instrument other than Joseph. From a human perspective, Joseph had the right and the ability to bring retribution upon his brothers, but he knew God was God and he was not. Such retribution was God's place, not Joseph's. Now, every Christian should be able to see the overarching and overruling hand of God in their lives. to know that no matter what evil man brings against us, God can use it for good. Joseph did not have the text of Romans 8:28, but he had the truth of it. And we know that all things work together for the good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Sadly, many of us who have the text do not have the truth. And to save many people alive, this was the immediate good in this situation. If this large family did not come to Egypt and live, it would have perished in the famine. And had the family barely survived, it would have assimilated into the Canaanite tribes surrounding it. Only by coming to Egypt could they be preserved and grow into a distinct nation. Then we close the book of Genesis with Joseph's death. In his final days, he echoes the same desires of his father. He does not want to be buried in Egypt. He knows that God's promise to give them the land of Canaan will be fulfilled. And he tells them, when that day comes, do not leave my bones behind. So Joseph dies trusting in God's promises. Congratulations, you've finished the book of Genesis with me. I know it may feel like we've covered a lot, and we have, but we're just getting started. We've completed the book of Job, so if you're following along, that's now 2 books we've completed. That's it for today. Thank you so much. God bless you all. I'll see you next time when we begin the book of Exodus.